Birth of the Cassette Vision. The Epoch. Cassette Vision was released in July 1981 by Epoch Cassette, a Japanese toy and electronics company. Before this, Epoch was mostly known for board games and toys, but with the booming arcade and home console scene in Japan, they wanted to enter the video game market. At that time, Japan's home gaming space was dominated by imported systems like the Atari 2600 and domestic machines like Bandai's consoles. Epoch wanted to offer a more affordable, family-friendly alternative. The Cassette Vision became one of the earliest domestically produced consoles in Japan, making it a crucial stepping stone for the Japanese gaming industry. A console for the average family. One of the biggest strengths of the Cassette Vision was its low price. The console launched at 13,500 yen, which was significantly cheaper than imported consoles. This made it accessible to ordinary Japanese households, helping it carve out a niche among families who couldn't afford the pricier machines. The focus on affordability set the tone for its design. Simple, functional, and easy to use. Epoch's approach showed that there was a market for inexpensive consoles in Japan, a lesson that would later shape the strategies of giants like Nintendo. Unique hardware design. Unlike many of its competitors, the Cassette Vision's design was quite unusual. It was a bulky console with two built-in joystick knobs and two fire buttons on the console itself, not separate controllers. Players had to sit close to the system because the controllers were fixed into the console's body. While not the most comfortable setup, it kept manufacturing costs low. The real innovation was in the cartridges. Instead of putting most of the processing power in the console, Epoch built much of the game's hardware directly into each cartridge. This kept the base console inexpensive, but made each game more costly than usual. Essentially, every cartridge came with its own mini circuitry. The first games. The Cassette Vision launched with a small but interesting lineup of games. The first titles included Baseball, Battle Vader, and Galaxian, a licensed version of Namco's hit arcade shooter. Galaxian, in particular, gave the console a strong start because it let families experience a recognizable arcade hit at home. The games were simple by today's standards, often monochrome or with very limited color, but they were engaging enough for the early 1980s audience. Over time, about 11 official cartridges were released for the original Cassette Vision, covering sports, shooting, and action games, competing in the early Japanese console market. When it arrived in 1981, the Cassette Vision's main competitors in Japan were older systems like the Atari 2600 and Bandai's Supervision 8000. Its lower price and access to arcade-style titles gave it a competitive edge. By the end of its run, the Cassette Vision had sold around 400,000 units in Japan, which was quite respectable for an early console in a growing but uncertain market. It helped prove that home consoles could be successful in Japan and encouraged more companies to invest in video game hardware. Hardware limitations. Despite its early popularity, the Cassette Vision had significant limitations. The graphics were primitive even by the standards of the early 1980s, often featuring chunky sprites and minimal animation. The sound output was basic, with simple tones rather than complex effects. The fixed controllers were often criticized for being uncomfortable, especially for games that required quick movements or long play sessions. As technology advanced, the console started to feel outdated compared to the more powerful machines arriving in the market. The successor, Cassette Vision Jr. To extend the life of the brand, Epoch released the Cassette Vision Jr. in 1983. This was a smaller, more compact, and cheaper version of the original console. It retained compatibility with the existing cartridges, but had a sleeker design and more traditional joystick controls. However, it launched around the same time as Nintendo's family computer, Famicom, which immediately overshadowed it with far superior graphics, sound, and a growing library of third-party games. The Cassette Vision Jr. could not compete with the Famicom's technological leap, and its sales were limited. The game library and highlights. Even though the library was small, a few Cassette Vision games stand out. Battle Vader, a simple but fun space shooter where players fought waves of enemy ships. Baseball, one of the earliest home sports games in Japan. Monster Mansion, a maze chase game reminiscent of Pac-Man. Galaxian, the biggest hit for the console, giving players a taste of an arcade classic at home. Because each cartridge contained much of the game's logic and processing, the games varied in complexity and performance. Some were surprisingly smooth, while others were quite basic. Transition to Super Cassette Vision, Epoch learned from the shortcomings of the original system and released the Super Cassette Vision in 1984. This upgraded console had better graphics, better sound, and more traditional controller ports, aligning it more closely with the Famicom's capabilities. While it improved on the original in many ways, it still couldn't overcome the dominance of Nintendo and later Sega. By the late 1980s, Epoch shifted back to making toys and licensed video games, leaving behind the console market. Why the cassette vision faded away, several factors contributed to the cassette vision's decline. Rapid technological progress. Within 2 years of its launch, newer consoles had surpassed it in performance. Small game library. With only about 11 titles, it lacked the software depth to keep players interested long-term. Controller design. The fixed joystick setup became a liability as competitors offered more comfortable and versatile controllers. Famicom's arrival. Nintendo's 1983 launch completely changed the Japanese gaming landscape, making older consoles like the Cassette Vision obsolete almost overnight. Despite these issues, the Cassette Vision's early success proved that there was a strong appetite for home gaming in Japan. Cultural significance in Japan. The Cassette Vision holds a unique place in Japanese gaming history as one of the first widely recognized domestic consoles. For many Japanese families in the early 1980s, it was their very first home video game machine. Its focus on affordability helped broaden the appeal of video gaming beyond arcades and wealthier households. It also showed Japanese toy companies that investing in video game hardware could pay off, paving the way for the rise of Nintendo, Sega, and others. Today, it's remembered fondly by retro gaming enthusiasts in Japan as a nostalgic artifact of a simpler era. The collector's scene today. Original Cassette Vision units and cartridges have become valuable collector's items. Because relatively few consoles and games were produced compared to later systems, finding working hardware can be difficult and expensive. Collectors appreciate it not only for its historical importance, but also for its quirky design. The bulky console with built-in joysticks is a distinctive reminder of early console experimentation. There are also emulators and fan communities that preserve its small library of games, keeping the legacy alive for future generations of gamers. Lessons from the Cassette Vision story. The rise and fall of the Cassette Vision highlights several key lessons. Price accessibility matters. Affordable hardware can open up new markets and attract a broad audience. Software drives longevity. A console's success depends heavily on a steady stream of compelling games. Innovation isn't enough. Hardware quirks can be interesting, but if they hinder usability, they become weaknesses. Adapt or fade. Companies that fail to keep up with rapid technological changes can be quickly overtaken. Epic's experience foreshadowed the intense competition and rapid evolution that would define the console industry for decades.